Okay, good evening. Welcome to AVA CCL Talk Series, Making a Career in Art Direction and Design. We are very happy to invite our speaker, Emilie Chen, and our moderator, Professor Learn. This talk is around 1 hour. After that, we have a 15 to 30 minutes Q&A session. Right now, I give the time to our Professor Learn. Professor Learn, please.
Hello, I'm Professor Learn Momo. So I'm very happy to welcome and thanks for Emilie times to share her career path experiments with you guys. Okay, your alumni, no matter you're going to graduate or current students. Okay, so I have to say something that Emilie's father is my close friend since I was a student in Paris. And he teach me a lot. No matter he's a teacher or not, he's a very famous architect in France and in Taiwan. So I can say that I have been part of Emilie's growth process. I have been seeing part of Emilie's growth process. And from her childhood love of creating and to her current life, and active in the creative scenes. It is quite exciting to meet her again after a really long time no see, okay? So I introduce Emilie Chen, is a French graphic designer and grew in Paris and later become art director based in London. And she was worked in-house at the National Theatre in the UK and Picky Books and patent brands. And her list of clients includes Patters, Somerset House, Audible, and Unmind. Most of her works cover branding, advertising, and exhibit, and design, window displays, editorial design, poster, and book cover design. She has give some guest lectures at the Central St. Martin, a very famous design school in London and London College of Communication, and is a co-founder of and volunteer organizer of Ladies Wide and Design London, a popular community group and event series for women and non-boundary creatives. And this is Emilie's background. Today, to talk, the title is Making a Career in Art Directions and Design. So the talk will include about her career, the journey, will explain her creative process and influence through case studies, and will share practical advice for students considering a career into design and art directions, including the importance of self-initiated projects and the powers of networking. Okay, I pass to Emilie. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for the introduction, Momo, and thank you so much for having me. It's great talking to you. I'm going to share my screen now to show you the presentation. Can you see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so yeah, I am Emilie Chen. I'm a freelance designer and art director from Paris, but I'm based in London, like Momo said. In terms of my presentation, I'm going to start by just explaining really quickly what's the difference between a graphic designer and an art director and kind of where the job opportunities are there. Then I'll get into show you some example of my work from my portfolio with 3 different case studies explaining my creative process and how I got to the final results. And then I'll go back a little bit in time explaining how I got to where I am now, where I studied, which job did I have, and how I got to freelance now. And the last part will be a few practical advice for finding a job in design and art direction. So yeah, just to start with really quickly to kind of explain the difference between graphic designer and art director. So graphic designers create visual concepts to communicate ideas to an audience, working usually for clients, and they would play with elements like shapes, colors, typography, existing images, and composition, so layouts. In terms of touch points, you can, pretty much graphic design touch pretty much everything from, say, street signage, posters, logo design, packaging in supermarket shelves, wayfinding, window displays, book covers, magazines. And then where kind of graphic designer can work? Well, a lot of designers are independent, freelance, or have their own studio, but there's also a lot of design or advertising agencies that use graphic designers. And then there's also a lot of opportunities working in-house for company or organizations, like I did. I'll get into that later. And what is an art director? So an art director is responsible for the visual output of the project. So they set the vision, but they don't necessarily execute it. That's kind of a big difference with a graphic designer who's really in charge to execute his ideas. So advertising is kind of where the term art directors appeared first. But you now have art director in everything from publication, so publishing, so say in a publishing company, or fashion, whether it's for brands or a fashion magazine, in film, in theater, like I do. And what's really exciting about being an art director is getting the opportunity to work with other creatives, say photographers or filmmakers, illustrators, retouchers, animators. And usually art directors are people that come from another discipline background. So a lot of photographers or illustrators or graphic designers become art director, basically. So you don't necessarily have to go to an advertising school to become an art director. And that's very much the path that I took. Then I wanted to share some images of my work. So I'll just flick through a few examples really quickly first. But yeah, I mainly work in theater now. So I do a lot of concept work for art direction and art direction for theaters to come up with the images to promote the shows. Like this one was for Porsche Kaplan and the Young Vec. That's a poster for another theater play called Once Upon a Time in Nazi-occupied Tunisia. I started more working in retail first. So I did a lot of window displays and kind of retail toolkits for shops. I've worked at Penguin Books where I did quite a few book covers, including that one, The Power of Bad. Salomé is a trailer for another theater show I worked on. I can show you the video on YouTube. So that's the one. So yeah, for that project, I worked on the art direction, the concept for the poster and the trailer. So I storyboarded that trailer video. Les Blancs was another theater show that I loved working on. I also work on exhibition design. So that was an exhibition at the National Theatre about how theatre makers have basically been involved in the suffrage movement in England at the beginning of the 20th century. Advertising campaign for retail as well. So yeah, when I used to work at Penland Brand, I did a lot of shoe advertising campaigns. Another theatre show, The Great Wave at the National Theatre. At the National, I also got to work on a couple of pop-up food truck for the summer. So creating the branding for them, which was a lot of fun. Pinocchio was another theater show. And Daddy, another theater show based on that was around an artist's relationship with a rich collectioner. So then I've got, some more in-depth case studies so you can understand where my creative idea come from, how I come up with my ideas, and how I execute them and how I sell the idea to the clients. So I work mainly in theater, so I wanted to show you the example of the theater campaign. What's really exciting about creating a theater poster is you need to create the image to promote the shows and sell tickets months before there is the theater show. So I would get briefed at a stage where you just have a script, so a text to read, and a director and writer. So for this one, the writer was Natasha Gordon, first-time playwright, and the director on the right is Alexander Roy Weiss. And they had just been, the show had just been picked to be put on at the National Theatre. It didn't even have a cast at that stage. It didn't have a designer. So all I had to work from was the text and what they told me in that first meeting about why they wanted to put that story on and what they saw it would look like on stage. So Nine Night is actually a Jamaican tradition. When someone dies, there's a wake. So the body of the deceased person stay in the house and for 9 days and 9 nights. And for 9 days and 9 nights, you will have family, friends, neighbors that will come to the house with food and music and stories. And it's a kind of celebration of the life of that person that just passed away. And it's a way to give support to their family so they're never left alone. And the story is set in England. So it's basically how that woman, Gloria, dies and how her family has to cope with their grief and to hold their first 9 nights of their life, and how everyone in the family just react differently. So it's kind of a family comedy, but obviously it's about a very dark topic. So there was the need to kind of balance the light element of the story with the darker one. So the way I work is I usually go away and then I will come up with 3 different concepts that I will present as a mood board and sketch. So the first concept I presented for Nine Night was this one, which I called Alone in the Crowds. So the kind of lead of the story is Gloria's daughter, Lorraine, who basically, she was the one caring for Gloria when she was sick. And at the very beginning of the story, she has to leave the house just for a few minutes. And basically that's when her mom dies. So when she comes back, she's just very upset because she missed her last moments. And for the whole of the play, there's that sense that Lauren is waiting for a kind of sign from her mom to kind of know what her mom would have told her in those last moments. So that's how I came up with that concept of having Lauren alone in the crowds. So that's the sketch just show how it would have had a kind of like a viewpoint a slightly bit from above, which gives you that kind of a bit of supernatural elements, that sense of she's waiting from a sign from this to come from the sky, basically. The second route, which I call A Shrine to Gloria, I was just really inspired by the references in the script to the house where the action takes place. So it's supposed to be that kind of really kind of 70s kitchen with the vintage wallpaper and the little crochet thing on the furniture. And so what happens is everyone arrives and they bring the sound system, they bring the food, so Jamaican patties, they bring drinks. And I thought, we could basically create a little set where you combine the house furniture with those elements that talks about the party and the funeral. So you get the flowers as well. And in the middle of it, you would have the portrait of Gloria, the woman who's just passed away. And the last concept, which is the one that was picked, is this one, which I call the parades. Because basically, when I thought about the play, I was like, okay, so it's a funeral, but it's also a party. So how about turning a procession into a parade? So you get all the characters of the family kind of crossing the screen. But I didn't want to do it literally, so I wanted to create something really graphic, which is why I kind of completely stripped back the setup and have all these characters just crossing from left to right in graphic words. And I wanted to communicate the idea that it was a Jamaican story. So I basically stripped back the color palette to just the color of the Jamaican flag, which are black, yellow, and green. They absolutely loved the concept. They thought it was brilliant, but they were like, but we don't have actors yet, or rather we just have one actress at that stage. So I was like, well, there's a way we can basically abstract the image to hide their faces, but still have the silhouettes by just moving the lights to have them backlit, basically. And I pulled out a couple of references on the left from Arcade Studio with the singer Benjamin Clementine saying, this is what it could look like. And we decided to go ahead with that route, and they basically found models and and also approach people kind of like outside of the school, the children's school, to ask, oh, I think you'd be brilliant for this, would you do this? So basically, except for one person, all the people on the poster actually didn't happen to be in the show at the end. Then what happens is I will just pick the right photographer for the shoot and just work really collaboratively with them to bring the vision to life. So these are a couple of behind the scene images with the photographer Simon Sorted. So what we did is we had to shoot the portrait of Gloria, or the student for Gloria rather. So we just had that very simple setup against a white backdrop, and then just played a little bit with the styling and in retouch to age the photograph. And then obviously we had to shoot everyone else on a very yellow backgrounds, which you can see on the right. And we had a whole team there in terms of costume, hair and makeup. And this is what the final image looked like. Once I had all the pictures, I basically put them all together in Photoshop. Just tweak the colors, cut out everyone to lose the shadows and have that very flat background. And this is what the campaign looked like on the Tube in London. Then the show was a massive success, so we transferred to the West End, where you had that billboard on the right, and they also did some bus advertising, which is always really exciting. I also have to design the program for the show. So the program will be where you can find more information about the show and about all the people in the company, from the actors to the set designer, musicians. And I just always try to draw inspiration from the concepts, from the art direction concept to feed into the design. So I had that kind of like jumble of company pictures on the right to create that kind of really quite busy, but also very bright and exciting story. And then in social media, this is what the kind of post look like. And then you always know that people love your image when they start recreating it, which is what happened on the left. And it's an image I just found on Twitter a few days after the show opening, which was really fun. So that was my example of a theater poster concept. Then I wanted to go into book cover, because I also worked at Penguin Books for 6 months as a kind of sabbatical leave cover. And I was working in Penguin Book Press, which is only non-fiction book. And one of the books I worked on was called The Undying. And it's by the poet Anne Boyer, who's American. And it tells her story in a very poetic way. It tells the story of her breast cancer, how she was diagnosed with it, and how she, the treatment and how the aftermath it had on her personal life. And it was a really, really beautiful and evocative book with a lot of very powerful imagery. And so I saw for something like that, at first I saw a photograph would be more appropriate. So basically I did a lot of research into art projects that kind of address the female body, the female body in a very vulnerable way. So these are a few images that I collected online. I especially like the one in the middle with where you see the scar of the breast has been removed from breast cancer, but also the one on the right, the kind of ghost outline of the brown. The skin is beautiful. I also tried to be a bit more conceptual, like what if you don't show the female body? How do you suggest breast cancer? And I thought the bra was a good idea to do this, and just had a look at artful interpretation of the bra. So this is a cyanotype, which is a photographic technique where rather than taking a picture, you put an object on photographic paper and you just expose it to the light. So it creates that kind of ghosty silhouettes and that really distinctive blue tint. I also tried to be a bit more abstract with the topic, thinking, okay, how can we suggest, again, that idea of disease, but in a more metaphorical way? So the one on the left is, a kind of faded flowers coming off that syringe to kind of hint at the treatment that she went through. The one on the right is Vanitas. So this kind of still life where you have a skull always kind of suggesting the shortness of life. I just comped into it the kind of, again, just some hospital paraphernalia. And then on the right, I came across these molded pictures of fruit. And so, this is really striking. And that's another great way to kind of suggest the idea of, disease. And then I also had a lot of at more abstract art. I love Lucio Fontana work. I think it's very powerful, and how his play on surface is just so, I don't know, it's kind of still something in you. It's, you can feel the violence basically. And I thought that was appropriate for, again, a story about breast cancer. So I looked at these images, kind of could be read as breast basically, and have all these holes kind of become tumors into it. But I also had a look at a more graphic execution, and that's the cover actually we put forward to the right first, where I just created that idea of a removal, but by playing with the surface of an actual photograph, a little bit like Fontana, but rather than working with a painted surface, I worked with an image. So we sent this to Anne Boyer, and she liked the concept, but she didn't like the image of the body. She was like, oh, this is kind of playing into a very heteronormative image of the female body. She's very thin. It's kind of, it's really not what my work is about. I'm about, something that's more real and more raw. So I thought, okay, how can I basically evolve the concept to take on board her feedback? And I played, basically with that idea of Fontana playing with the surface, but playing with that idea of that the surface would be the skin. So I saw about slashing it, or on the right about creating this kind of holes, but onto a very minimal abstracted image of a woman's breasts. And that's basically the cover that was chosen and went into production. And my last example is of case study is a National Theatre exhibition. So the National Theatre has opened in the 1970s, and since the 1970s, there are a lot of very amazing designers that have worked there and created very iconic posters. So basically, the National Theatre decided to dedicate an exhibition to 30, 40 years of National Theatre posters. And they put on board a man called Rick Poyner, who's a very famous graphic design critic and teacher. And is the one who basically, he wrote a book about the National Theatre posters, explaining the story and how it feeds into the story of a British graphic design as well. And he curated the exhibition. So I selected, I think, something like 50 posters from the archive to be put into the space. So I had to create the identity for the exhibition, and I thought something that's quite distinctive about the National Theatre posters is the format. It's quite a unusual format called the DC poster, which is not really in use anymore now. But there was something about playing with that format, that ratio, that I thought was really interesting. So I created a kind of grid playing with that ratio to kind of split the title of the shows. And this is what the campaign kind of build it up to be like once you start integrated images from the shows into the campaign. So it went online, obviously, to promote the exhibition. And then this is some images from the in-situ. So down there, we had some big light boxes where I splitted the image across 3 panels. Then there was a gobo. So a gobo is a kind of special light, which is a stencil, but for light, basically, that was projected onto the architecture inside the building to show people where the exhibition was. So you've got a tiny little arrow. I don't know if you can see it from at that scale, but yeah, showing you that it's basically happening on that mezzanine. And then, so I work closely with the printer and an installer to make it happen on the in the space. So rather than printing it into solid panels, what we did is every single square was printed and cut out differently, and each color is a different texture. So basically you can see the blue is really shiny, pink was matte, I think green was texture, so there was a tiny bit of grains. So it made the space look much richer rather than if it had been just a flat graphic. But obviously it was quite a complicated process to install these images. So I had to create like a very solid grid, and I had to, when everything came back from the printer, I had to basically map everything out and create different little stacks for each panel. And this is what the final exhibition build looked like. So yeah, it's just very impactful. All these little squares that I kind of drawn from the colors of the posters coming together and creating something quite playful. There was some table display. There was a little animation. And yeah, that's basically how it all came together. Then I wanted to get more into how did I get here, basically, what was my journey into becoming a freelance graphic designer and art director doing what I do now. So yeah, like Momo said, I was just a very creative child. My father is an artist, so I grew up with paintings hanging on the wall and my father doing painting in the living room. And I just did a lot of drawing from when I was really little. So when it comes to pick a profession when I graduated from high school, I knew I wanted to do something creative, but on the contrary to my dad, I didn't feel like I could be an artist. I felt like I needed more of a structure. I needed some brief, I guess, to work to, projects, solutions to find, basically. So what I did after high school is I did a MANA. So it's in France, I did all my studies in France, and in France, a MANA is basically a 1-year foundation course in design. So for a year, I tried my hand at graphic design, product design, architecture, fashion, print design, typography. It was a very, very intense year, but it was just really helpful to kind of get my hand around all these different disciplines and what I liked about them. And you build a portfolio basically in that year. And at the end, you apply to get into BAs in those different specific disciplines. So you have to pick one. So I actually applied for a couple of different disciplines, but I definitely felt like communication design, graphic design, image making was something that really got me excited and inspired. So I ended up, getting a spot in a BTS, which is kind of a BA, but in 2 years in France, in communication design in Montreuil, in Paris suburb, where for 2 years I learned graphic design and advertising. And our focus was on print, so I did a lot of layouts for, say, magazines, book covers, poster design, and branding. So learning how to create a visual identity, logos, and then how you roll out that identity across different touch points, brochure, letter, how do you call that? Sorry, I lost my word. The stationery basically for a business. I really enjoyed this, and I so wanted to carry on my study after that. So I did what after the BA in France is called a DSA, and it's kind of a bit like an MA. It's much more conceptual in terms of developing your practice. So you have 1 year to develop a personal project and write a memoir about it. And what was quite interesting about the specific course is that we were actually mixed with students from product design. So for the first year, we did a few kind of cross-discipline collaborative projects, which was, at first I got really frustrated because I was like, that's not what I want to be doing. But in terms of developing your creative mind, it was very interesting to learn things from their perspective. So I graduated back in 2008. And what did I do then in terms of my next step to finding a job? The truth is, it was the year after the recession, so it was actually really, really hard. No one was really hiring. So for a while, what I did, but what was actually quite productive again, like the foundation, is doing a lot of internships, because internships are a way for you to explore different area of the industry and to figure out what is it you actually enjoy the most. So I did one at Gallimard, which is a very big French publishing house, working on book cover design. Then I did one at, a small agency called Jetlag at the time, whose main role was to design a high-end fashion magazine called So Chic. And I was the only designer there except the creative director. It was a tiny team. So I basically had to lay out the whole magazine by myself, which was a huge job. Thankfully, it was a quarterly magazine. So I just worked on two issues in 6 months. Then what happened is, when I was studying design in France, a lot of my design heroes were British or American. So I was really keen to get an experience abroad, either in the States or in the UK. But obviously, being French, having and the UK still being in the EU at that stage, it was much easier to work in London. So I sent lots and lots of applications. I mean, I lost track. I sent so many of them and hardly got any response, except Odds, which was a quite small size agency at the time. They've become quite big since, but they got me in for an interview, and they really liked my book and decided to get me in to do an internship for them. And it was really interesting. They were doing some packaging, but mainly they were working for retail brands like Westfield, Lacoste and Uniqlo. So I started working on window displays and retail toolkits there. After that, it's not really a timeline you have here, because what I did is I had a summer job lined up in France, not design related, but basically I went back after my internship at Odd. And I started looking for a job in France. Again, it was still the kind of aftermath of the recession, so it was really hard to find work, and it took months. But finally, I managed to get a kind of junior creative role at this really small design agency called Cadence in Paris, doing the same type of thing that I was doing at Odd. So retail toolkits, window displays, and I did also a kind of training catalog for Lancôme, so a really big layout job. But I really miss London, and also I was paid minimum wage, so I was still living at my parents', which allowed me to save. So after a year, I basically decided to quit that job and to go back to London without having a job lined up. It was really tough again. So I ended up going back to having to do internships, paid one, luckily, but still. So I did one at SAS, which was a really big kind of agency working mainly for corporate clients, like big brands, banks, assurance companies, this type of clients, on projects that were more digital. And then I got an internship I really enjoyed at Provocateur, which was a tiny little design agency that was only working for good. So they were working a lot for charities and sustainable projects. But yeah, eventually I managed to get a full-time role. So that was that was basically more than 2 years after I graduated. I managed to find a permanent position in London, first at French Connections, but it was creative art worker role, so it wasn't really creative. So I was still looking while I was doing that job, and that's how I got the role at Penland Brands. So Penland is a big group of retail brands. They own Speedo, Canterbury, Wells. They had the license to create all the Lacoste shoes, Kickers shoes, Ellesse, Ted Baker shoes, and they had an in-house team that was working across all the brands on all type of projects, whether it was advertising campaign, brandings, conference venues, packaging, branding. So I worked on, say, a branding project for Speedo new goggle technology, or window display for them. And I worked on a lot of campaigns, advertising, retail campaigns for the like of Kickers, Ellesse, and Speedo during these years. But after 3.5 years, I knew it was time to move on. I was looking for new roles. I knew I wanted to try something different because I felt like I had done everything that was kind of possible in that realm. And I wanted to get my hand in more conceptual projects. And that's when a friend sent me a job ad for a role at the National Theatre, a freelance role. And at first I was like, oh, I don't stand a chance. I don't have the experience. But eventually on the last day I applied, and they invited me in for an interview and gave me a creative task to do. And I thought, I've got nothing to lose. So I went all out, and I went beyond the brief that was given to me, which was to create concept for poster, to show a 360 guerrilla marketing campaign with and a kind of installation at the National Theatre. And that's how I got the job. And even better, they basically offered me a 12-month role that turned into a few months in, turned into a permanent position. And I ended up working them for 4 years. I left in 2018 thinking, again, I need a new challenge. I've done everything I kind of wanted to do there, and I don't really want to climb the ladder and become a manager there because I like being hands-on too much. So I decided to go freelance. One of the things I really wanted to do is book covers was another one of my dreams. So I sent a lot of emails to different publishing houses, art director, and I just got lucky. And the Penguin Books art director, Jim Stoddart, replied he really liked my work and would keep my kind of name on file. I contacted him again 6 months later, and that's when one of his designers was going on sabbatical leave to write her own book. And he said, oh, I'm actually looking for someone to fill in for her while she's away. Would you be interested? And of course, I jumped on the occasion, and that's how I ended up working there for 5.5 months. And I finished in April 2019, and since then I've been solidly freelancing, basically. So I work mainly directly with my own clients that tend to be theatre and publishing houses. But I've also, especially during the pandemic, had to do some work for agencies. So in that case, I'd be contracted by an agency to work on a certain project for a certain amount of days, and I'll be paid a day rate. And that's always quite interesting because it's the occasion to get used to new process, meet new people, work with different type of clients. So last year, especially, I worked for 4 or 5 months for an agency called Just So, a content agency creating content for a mental health platform called Unmind. So doing art direction for a different video they were creating, one on the menopause and another one that was a course on mindfulness by a monk called Shoden. So that's a kind of a quick tour of my career and how I got to be where I am now. I wanted to finish with a few very practical career advice for people who are considering working in that field. The first of them is, so obviously from schools or things like that, you will start to build a portfolio, but something that's very important is to start your own projects, your own self-initiated brief, basically, because that's the best way to kind of showcase what you can do and show what you can do when you're given free reins. So create something that really looks like you. It's also a great way to kind of learn new skills and or hone your existing skills. So one of these projects that I did while I was at Penland Brands is I had a friend who was really passionate about helping charities. And he was saying how, especially youth charities, how they were always looking for people to help teach new skill to young people. And but how his friend working in charity was always complaining that she was struggling to find volunteers, didn't really know how to go around to do that. So my friend came up with that idea to create a platform basically to connect the charities with potential volunteers for one-off projects. And he called it the Little Helpers. I got really excited about the project and got involved with him and said, okay, I'll volunteer and help you create the branding and the communication for it. So, but also what I decided to do is do a little animated video to explain the concepts. I didn't learn animation, so I basically had very basic skills from school. I had like maybe a half day learning Flash, because at the time we were still using Flash. And I spent hours trying to create that little storyboard I had created in an animated version. So I can show you the final video online. Oh, sorry. So it's not a skill I really had to use in my career since, but in terms of helping me develop as a creative, it was really useful. And also, even though I ended up working at the National Theatre, this project did help me land a few interviews with branding agencies. So I would really, really highly recommend starting your own project. Something else that I've done as a personal project is so I used to commute on the tube to the National Theatre, and I would have 15 minutes on the tube where I would be scrolling on my phone. And I had a friend who was commuting from Brighton, which is 1 hour away on the train from London. And she was also frustrated spending her time commuting on her phone. And she came up with a brilliant idea to there's a free newspaper at Tube Station in the evening called the Evening Standard. And basically, she came up with the brilliant idea that every night on her commute, she would use the Evening Standard and create a collage from the element that was in it. And she just had 1 hour to do it. And she showed me her collages, and I just thought that was such a brilliant idea. And I was like, okay, so what can I do with my 15 minutes commute that's creative and will help me kind of get out of the phone and just, do stuff. And I came up with the idea to kind of create, just draw portraits of people on the tube. And I did that for 3-4 solid years, did over 800 portraits. And basically that really helped me develop my sketching skills. I had always been good at drawing, but I was doing photograph for like hours at end. And when you're drawing on the tube, it's a completely different process because you don't know if the person is getting off at the next stop. Maybe you just have 2 minutes with them. Maybe you've got 15 minutes, but you have to be quick. So that really helped me kind of develop my sketching skill, which is now amazing in terms of, visualizing my ideas when it comes to theater posters. And I have to kind of sketch my idea in a poster format. So self-initiated brief really help you build your portfolio and help it stand out. Something else is you really need to share your work with the world. So utilize all the kind of platforms that you can. Social media is obviously a big one. Instagram especially, I'm sharing my work there, and a couple of times it has led to work opportunities, but mainly it has been a great way to connect with potential new collaborators. I lots of photographers and illustrators that I now follow and follow me. And it's been really nice kind of building relationships through the platform like that. And then there are more specialized websites like Behance or The Dots or Working Not Working, which are built for creative to find creative opportunities. So they're free to join, and you can just create a portfolio and you have a kind of function to just connect with other creatives on it. And then also something else you can do is you can share the work that you think is the strongest with creative blog like It's Nice At or Creative Boom. And if you get picked up and you get your work shared, like it gives you access to, it gives your work so much more visibility. So yeah, I really, really recommend just using all this platform to just raise your visibility, try to find work and collaborators. Accept rejection is part of the process is a big one that I think people don't talk about enough, especially when you come to job search. Like it's hard, it's really hard out there. It's a very competitive industry. And like I said, during my first couple of years after graduating, I just sent hundreds and hundreds of applications and that never went anywhere. And something that I wish that I had known at the time and that are important to know, I think, as you're about to get into the journey, is that if you email people and people don't reply, don't take it personally. People are busy, and don't be afraid to follow up if you don't hear back. Maybe just timing, your email just got buried into the mailbox. It happens. It happens to me too. If people reply to you and tell you they're not hiring at that moment, maybe you can ask if they can give you a portfolio review. So if they basically can give you feedback on the work that you send them. It's always, it's always great if you can know basically why you didn't get a job. And maybe that's because you don't have enough digital work in your portfolio. Maybe they just landed a German client and they decided to hire a German designer. You just never know. So it's always helpful to get feedback. And a no now doesn't mean no forever. So maybe someone will turn you down for a job, and then in 6 months down the line or a year, they'll be hiring again. And maybe at that point, it's worth reapplying because now you will be the right person, because suddenly the needs aligned with what you can offer, or maybe you've worked on new projects that are more aligned to what they do. It's just, just be really mindful that rejection is temporary and that it's just part of the process. It's like the creative process, really. You have to go through a lot of bad ideas and iterations before you can get to the final result and the shiny Instagram ready work. Find your support network is very, very important. So as Momo said in the introduction, I run a creative network called Ladies Wine and Design London. And it's been just amazing for my career, because what creative networks do is they help you connect with people that do the same thing than you, that are facing the same challenges than you. So maybe can give you advice in terms of how they've dealt with these challenges. It might help you connect with potential collaborators or people that might hire you. And the truth is that most people don't necessarily advertise for jobs in their company. They just look through the network. They might, especially in the design industry in the UK, people would just email a friend at another agency saying, oh, do you know a good junior designer? And that's how most opportunities are filled. So that's why it's so important to build a creative network in the places where you work. And something I was struggling with when I worked in the industry at the beginning is just so male orientated. Like, I think when I was studying design, and I know it's still the case now, there was just 60-70% of students were women. Well, you get to the industry and they're just 30%, and you get to creative director level and they're like 15% now. And when I graduated, it must have been like 10%. So it's just really hard to find people who can relate to that. And most of the people I worked with were men. So when Jessica Walsh, who is a very famous graphic designer in New York that I follow on Instagram, said she was started Ladies Wine Design, a kind of just informal networking events for women creatives, and that she said she was starting this in New York and that people could create a chapter in their own city and just get in touch with her team. I decided to try because I was going to a lot of networking events, but they tended to be really big, like DNAD or Creative Mornings. And I'm quite shy. I'm an introvert. I don't really like talking to strangers, especially in a setting where you've got hundreds of people in a room. So the idea of Ladies Wine Design, having 7 women seated around a table talking about the similar challenges just felt like the right format for me. And it just grew and grew and has become quite big now. I think we've got something like 3,000 people subscribed to a newsletter, while we don't have any budget, we don't have any support. We just do it on our own time. But it's been amazing, as I said, just making connections with really incredible women and finding mentors. When I decided to go freelance, I was basically, I was still working at the National Theatre. I decided to go freelance, and I just reached out to a lot of women that I had met through Ladies Wine and Design that were freelancers, and asked if they would meet me for coffee. And then I just asked them how they did it, how they found clients, what advice they could give me. And it's just been so valuable. But something to be mindful of when you go into networking, and I can't stress the importance of networking enough, is just to go in the optics to make friends, not connections. People can say when you're genuine, and when you basically want to exchange, you're just not there to take advantage of them. It just have to grow quite organically. So just be patient. It takes a lot of time, but it's just so rewarding. So wherever you are, I really recommend you look up the creative networks in your city. I know there used to be a Ladies Wine and Design Hong Kong chapter. I don't know if it's still active, but I definitely recommend you look it up. So and then just in terms of network in general as well, keep in touch with your teacher and classmate after you graduate, and just keep in contact as well with all the people you get to work with across your career. You never know when the next opportunity is going to come up. But again, it might just come from someone that you know from 10 years ago. So very important. So and then my last advice is don't be afraid to dream big. So that image is from one of my projects for the National Theatre, my very first campaign for them, actually, called Everyman. So as I mentioned before, when the National Theatre role came up, at first I saw I didn't have a chance, and I almost self-sabotaged and didn't apply. So because I saw I didn't have the right experience, I just didn't, even though that was the job of my dreams, from my time at uni, my dream was to design theatre posters. My hero were people like Paul Hacher and Michel Batory in France, who do theatre posters, and I just saw that looked like the coolest job in the world. So I just feel quite lucky I got to do it, but I got to do it because at the end I wasn't afraid to apply and give it a shot. And same for book covers. I didn't have any experience doing book covers, and I just sent an email to all these art directors and ended up working for the biggest publishing company in the world. So don't be afraid to dream big. It might take you a while to get there, but just carry on pursuing your dream and being persistent, basically, to get where you want to get to. And that's me. Thank you. I stopped screen sharing.
Maxia, thank you. So very rich, your life, and I can see a quite strong woman now because I still remind you like a kid. Okay, and now you're really a strong woman. And I think that quite some questions that touch what I would like to ask, but for the chance, I will let this open the Q&A sections for our audience, our student. And if you have any question, you can type it in the chat room. Otherwise, I will still go on. I have some questions for Emilie. Okay. So any questions at this moment? Yeah, they're really shy. The first thing I would like to ask some related to your work, rather than being a fresh graduate student. the first one is I see your web has a very strong colors and shapes. And also you always to show a big hat with a concave face, for the poster, for your theater, the advertising work. I think it is your personal preference, or it is a common visual strategies.
I think what's quite, I think I've got quite a distinctive style, and that my work kind of really stand out from the rest of the theater marketing advertising in the UK. And I think one of the reasons that my work looks the way it does is because I train as a graphic designer. So I gravitate towards playing with negative space. So stripping back everything to the essentials, less is more, is a kind of a very famous mantra in graphic design. And I think that really shows in my work. And then, gravitating also to like very bold, stripped back color palettes and shapes. I think it really comes from that training, basically. But then the other thing is, my father is an artist. I love art. I'm visiting exhibition all the time. And I think that's something that really influenced my work, especially from the concept point of view, is how do you translate an idea in a visual form with an actor. I'm just very heavily inspired by painting. So for example, the Salomé image and trailer that I share is obviously kind of Bill Viola meets Caravaggio kind of inspiration.
I can see because we have done some the CCL talks related to the student further study, and also the very specific area, what the requirements of being like a ceramic maker and like illustrator. But somehow I found out that your PowerPoint and your preparation is very well. And also you will use your basic, knowledge about the visual knowledge to how to make this very simple animations to communicate with our student. No matter they will think so. So it seems like very simple, but I think you spend time and ideas how to plan a really short animations, and for everyone could understand and make more interest in this. I think that this is a really good example for all the students. And the second is beyond of the art making or your design making. Your father is my close friend, and your father is a Taiwanese who is a very important art critic and also an artist. And your mother is a French. How does this affect your creation? Do you think it has?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's quite hard to pinpoint because it's basically, I grew up like this, so it's the air I breathe. And I think it's quite hard to distinguish exactly where the difference lie. But I think it just made my sources of inspiration much richer from when I was a kid, because I was exposed to a mix of culture. And it's also how you merge those cultures together. So I often compare art direction to cooking, because I feel like it's about coming up with, you need to fill your kitchen, your inspiration kitchen, with as many ingredients as possible. So when it comes to cooking, you can create the richest dish possible. And one thing that really makes me laugh is my mother, who's French, puts grated Gruyere on top of my father's Cantonese fried rice. And it's just amazing. So I'm all about fusion kitchen. So I really think that it really inspires me. I think, something else is obviously, I learned a little bit of Mandarin. I'm nowhere fluent, but I learned a little bit of Mandarin as a kid, and I always loved the characters, the drawing, and they actually like logos, because it's basically combine symbols to create meaning. And I think that's something that really resonates with graphic design, basically.
Oh, okay. So I can tell you about the cooking. I went to Paris for 3 times to visit your father and family. You know, they cook the same things for me. Fried chicken, French cheese, and the Taiwanese rice, and also the black season that your father usually, black season is on the surface of the rice and didn't change. And I suddenly laughed, and then they didn't know why. Is it a good taste or not? I thought about, okay, I remember the taste. It's the same.
Yeah.
Okay, so I see that we have some questions. Okay. Would you like to read this in the chat rooms? Charles Chance.
Yeah. So Chanel is asking, thank you for sharing. I would like to ask, being a French working in the UK, do you see much difference in how people from these two countries react to design? What advice would you give to young people who want to work abroad in another culture? So yes, there's absolutely a big difference in terms of design culture in the UK and in France. I mean, I especially see it with theatre posters, like theatre posters in the UK are about promoting the shows. They're much more like advertising in terms of using bold photography that's really speaks to the show, while in France, they tend to have a graphic designer who has a strong style working for a theater. So you will see the theater poster and you will recognize the style of the designer. It doesn't tell you anything about the show. So it's a very different approach. It's more graphic design than advertising in France, which is really interesting. And just, the way the visual language, the pop culture is different. So there's always a big difference there. I think there's kind of two advice I would give to someone who wants to work abroad. One of them is learn the culture there. Like, it's going to be a shock to the system. And it still is to a point, living in the UK after 12 years. And one thing I wish I had known when I moved to the UK and I was applying for jobs there is, for example, one of the big cultural difference is in France, when you write emails or letters, it's very formal. You call people dear Mr. and Mrs. You use the vous, which is for the plural vous. In French, you've got tu and vous, and it's a bit complicated as a grammar rule, but basically you don't talk to people you work with or people that are superior to you with the same pronouns that you do in English. In English, it's you for everything. So it just simplifies things, but it also makes things much more informal because everyone is at the same level. So basically all my applications were way too formal, way too long, because I was writing in English like I would in French, and people are not used to that here. People want very short email. They want you to say hi Ollie, hi Kat. So not even the full name, the nickname, and have two very short paragraphs, straight to the point, to say what you're after, basically. So that's a big cultural difference, which is not just about the design, but also just the way people communicate. And that's a very important thing that you need to crack quite early on. But then the other part is you need to hold on to your culture as well, because that's what's going to make you different. And as a creative, it's important to be different and to stand out from the competition is, just playing up on what makes you you. So yes, you have to do both. You have to adapt, but hold on to what makes you different. So I hope that answered the question.
Okay. I still hate to kiss 4 times when a French people. That's a really fake waste of the time. If more than 10 people in circle. Okay, next question.
Well, I think with COVID now, the kissing is gone. So here you go.
Okay, so may you check the second questions?
Yes. You have mentioned that you like drawing since childhood, but I heard that graphic designers need to change their work several times according to the client's opinion, and sometimes designers have to work overnight. How can you draw a line between your passion in drawing and your career in graphic design? So actually, something I want to address here is you don't have to work overnight, but I think it's cultural. In the UK, there's actually a pretty good work-life balance. In graphic design, if you work in advertising, it's crazy, but in graphic design and in general, corporate life in UK is pretty good at work-life balance. From what I hear of, what happened in Japan, I don't know about Hong Kong, but what I heard about Japan or Spain or Italy, it's really bad. But in the UK, it's really good. So it's not so much something I had to deal with in my career. Also, having worked in-house tend to be better for work-life balance at agency because your clients are in the same building than you and they want to leave at 5, you know? So yeah, and so if you grab coffee with them and become friends with them, obviously they don't want to put you through having to put an all-nighter unless you really have to. So yeah, for that sense, working in-house rather than in agency is good. And then being a freelancer, you set up your own agenda. You have to be really strong in terms of pushing back with clients, maybe asserting, I'm not answering email after 7 p.m. I never had to do that, but I've had very good clients so far, so I've been lucky. But it doesn't have to be this way, I think, is what I want to say first. And then in terms of drawing a line between your passion in drawing and your career in graphic design, I mean, I live and breathe my passion, and I spend my spare time drawing and going to exhibitions and stuff like that. To me, it doesn't feel like work, but it's obviously something that helps in my work. So I guess it's about you trying to find where you draw the limits, and just being I think being a freelancer, what you need to learn is be a good boss to yourself. So yeah, you need to you learn on the job to know where your limits are, but it's very important to know to make time to rest and not be creative, because that's also how you recharge your batteries.
Okay,
I hope that answered the questions. Yeah. Ava is asking, as graphic designer and working in UK, Europe now, any client or friend are talking about NFT creation? Well, very tentatively. It hasn't happened with clients. With friends, especially I've got a few illustrator friends, they have been talking about it, but mainly the reaction so far among my friends has been, they are bad for the environment, I'm not going to engage. I personally don't know enough about NFT. I don't see myself as an artist, so I don't feel like this is where my work is going to go, but obviously you never know. But yeah, for my part, I just haven't engaged with it at all so far. And Jingy is asking, I noticed that you say you couldn't be an artist like your father. What do you think about being an artist and being a designer? I think being an artist seems depend more on talent and networking. I think any discipline will be about talent and networking, and luck. Luck is also a big factor. You never know, like knocking at the right door at the right time is something you have no control over sometimes. So in terms of, from my own experience, the difference between an artist and being a designer is, I think as an artist, you need to be much more disciplined in terms of, well, setting up your own briefs and your own timelines and sticking to it. And how creative do you feel without having any pressure? I know a lot of designers that strive on having that pressure and that basically produce their best work in the 24 hours before a deadline. So it's really dependent of your temperament, I think. But yeah, as for me, as I was mentioning, I just felt like I needed to be working for people. And I think as an artist, you work for yourself first and foremost. So that's a very big difference. I work for clients and my work is really creative and very artful, but I'm very mindful that this is not art. This is not art at all. I know that at the end of the day, most of the work I do is going to end up in a bin within 3-4 months once the campaign is done. And that's something I'm not precious about.
I think that different people have a different talent. And it's really hard to divide only one, what we call talent in art-related areas. And yes. Okay, so that's no more the question at this moment, but I would like to ask few more questions. I would like to know how do you see the future directions of the visual industry or a new job style opportunity? And now you are professional freelance for many years and also working with different institutions or company. And what do you think about the future directions of the visual industry? Is that it?
Well, I think in general I think things like NFT or Meta, the kind of is kind of a direction the world is going. So this will create new opportunities for creatives and all type of sorts. I don't really work in digital. I don't really engage. So maybe that's a blind spot from me, but I'm aware that this is something that is happening. I think machines, AI, all of this are obviously becoming more and more smarter and powerful, and can now create a lot of things that other discipline, other tasks do. So I think as artists, we need to be very strong in terms of defining what our purpose is, what's different that we can bring. I think ideas is the first one. It's like machines are not going to come up with original ideas. So this is definitely a big differentiating point for us. And then in terms of a visual language as well, is obviously with new technology coming, there's always new, creative world come into that space and just come up with new visual language, which is always something really exciting. But it's always important to also work on developing your own style and your own visual language. And some of it can come from working with constraints from a new technology, but I think this is also something that you need to work on independently to make sure that your works also live outside of trends and tools.
Okay, so do you have any future plan related to your career?
Well, I'm always juggling a lot of projects on the go, but right now I'm doing a course for Domestika. I don't know if you know of them, but they're basically an online courses platform for creatives. So I'm developing a new course for them on generating ideas for art direction projects. So I'm in the midst of that, and it's very exciting, but also a bit daunting because I need to explain in very actionable steps to people how I create my work, and to give people the tools to do the same in a way that feels that they can make theirs.
Okay, thank you.
So that's one thing.
So, actually, I have one question. Because many young people in Hong Kong have to or will go to the UK to study or find jobs. So you already to give the suggestion, the advice, how they can do the beginning, the business, and also looking for jobs, like the animation you made. And I think overall it's not limited to UK. We talk quite, different places. Okay, so thank you very much. I do hope we can share your the suggestions and also the animation to overall our student beyond this talk. Okay. And thank you, the Domestika organization. And also, if you're interested, you can take a look, but I think it really depends on you have the time. So people can copy this link. One is the online career talk. A few of our teachers organized this career talk, and we're all already uploaded on the YouTube. Is it, Sandy, for more than 2 years or 1 year? So last year,
I think 2 years already.
2 years, it still work. And another one is the further study. We invite some alumni. They are working, and some are graduating back to Hong Kong. We will talk about any requirements at the time schedule, and also how to prepare your portfolio, the living standard, and the school fee, etc. Most of the Europe, they do not ask you the tuitions. So this is a really good chance for the student. But the only thing is really to prepare to learn foreign languages. But I think it's good because you are all young, and then spend 7 months, 8 months to seems like a study another languages is not only benefits to your study, but benefits your visions and also for your life. So take a look. The creative talk, and then also the further study. So if Emilie have interest about this, you can take a look too.
Okay.
Last year we didn't promote that name, the workshops again. So thank you. Do you have any questions for us?
No, that was really well. We talked a little bit before the talk, and that was really helpful. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks for having.
It's not admission, because as student admission, most of the students we always ask, do you have the question for us? And the students always said that Do you think I have the chance?
Oh.
We have no answer. We can't answer that questions in at that time. So this this is the kids. So for me, this is the kids. Okay. Sunday. So we can end it up now.
Yeah. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Sunday will contact you further about the recordings and also maybe the animation I really like to have to screen it in the school.
Okay.
Right? Okay. See you.
Bye-bye.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.